Well, good morning. Welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk. I am obviously not Katrina Madewell. This is Leo Cannyn with Beryl Engineering and Inspection. I believe Katrina right now with Pat George is in Austin. And I'm not quite sure where Adam's at today, but I do have his 2-minute insurance tip of the week. But you were listening to Tampa Home Talk. Love where you live, or we're going to fix it. So on this exciting hour of Tampa Home Talk, I have, now some of you might be getting threats in the mail that says this is not a bill from Mr. Gary Joyner, because his name's all over it. I brought in Gary Joyner to talk about this is not a bill. I also brought Mike Fasano in, the tax collector. He's a longtime fan and guest on the show to help me, because only he could carry a show without Katrina's absence. And to make sense of it all, we have Ray Hall from Ray Hall Appraisers.
Yes.
To talk about the private side of this not a bill.
Nope.
And we have Tim Couette.
Yep.
Couette.
That's me.
And he's the customer relations manager. Why does with your persona and your presence, Mike, why do you need a customer relations manager?
Because we deal with about 50,000 customers per month at our 5 offices and through our call center. And although the emails come directly to me, we need someone who's going to also be in response to an immediate needing of some help. That's why we also hired a customer advocate, Samantha, who handles issues that have nothing even to do with our tax collector's office, because people don't know who else to turn to.
Wow. So 50,000 people in Pasco County are calling about this is not a bill?
Coming to our office or calling our office or sending us something in the mail that needs to be dealt with, yes.
Awesome. So I just want to start with going a little bit about background of Mr. Gary Joyner, because it's not every day we get to have the man whose name is on how many sheets of paper just get mailed out?
288,000.
288,000 people have just received a letter in the mail with your name on it. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became that the person.
The lucky person to mail them out.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, your photo's on the website too.
It is. We don't hide anything. We're like Mike. We're very transparent. I was fortunate enough that I got to spend 3 or 4 years with Mike. I previously, my prior life, prior to being the property appraiser, was working at the tax collector's office. I had a great career there of over 30 years. Learned a lot about what we do there. I could take over to the property appraiser's office. So I was lucky enough. I ran in 2016 and was fortunate enough and graceful enough to be elected. I love the job. The great thing about having Mike and all that is that we have a great working relationship, and it's nice to be able to walk across the hall and be able to talk to somebody and share ideas and things like that with.
So you're an elected position then?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. So you have to beat an opponent on a regular basis? Campaign? Is there debates?
Absolutely. We love those debates. We as we were just talking about the picture on the website, we're very transparent. We think we've made definitely some improvement since we've taken office, and have some more way to go. We never want to sit back and be comfortable, so always got to look forward.
So what kind of community activity or involvement do you have?
We are very fortunate that I have a great staff, and it took them a little bit to realize how lucky we all are, and it is good time to give back. We've done fundraisers for food, fundraisers for clothes. We just did a diaper fundraiser for Sunrise over in Dade City. We're doing a breast cancer walk. I can't think of our walk we do in April.
Shoes and socks.
Shoes and socks. Yes, we have a great competition with my friend Mike in the shoes and socks. I'm not sure who will get it this year. I have a feeling Mike's going to pull it out again this year. So.
Well, you won it last year.
I did, but you got it the year before, and then
you won it last year because you went out and bought a bunch of shoes.
I had to. It's the only way I could win. Awesome. And it is hard to compete. Mike has a great thing, and I'm not lucky enough to have 50,000 customers a month walk through the door. But again, from on Mike's side, it takes a lot to take care of those 50,000. But we don't have that, fortunate. But a lot of what we have, Mike he'll talk about every bill I send out, Mike has to collect.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's why we have to have that good working relationship to be able to come back and work with each other. And one of the things that's not on here, and it's not about the trim notice going out today, but we work real good with them on fraud.
Yep.
And we've tried to tackle that real hard since we've took office. It was a non-issue before we got there, and we've made it a big issue. And so far, We've put a little over $60 million since I took office 2.5 years ago in taxable value back on the tax roll.
Nice.
Which is that's a lot of money for this county that was missing. So we don't make very many friends that way either. But, all that work we do, we don't get a penny. But my friend here gets a nice 2% off of that. So, but we work hard. Our staffs work really good together because a lot of information we have to get is from them or from other county departments. So it's, and I think that's been one thing is to work together. I think we right now, and Mike would probably agree, and I think we all agree, it's a great time in Pasco to all be together. We all, can work with each other and get along and all have great ideas. And I don't think anybody is, in past, I think we've had some unfortunate elected officials that were for themselves. And this is, obviously, Mike, it's not for himself. It's for everybody that he can help. So
speaking of elected officials, so Mike, is your position also an elected position?
Yes, in fact, each county, but for a couple, have constitutional officers. Here in Pasco, you have the clerk of the court, the property appraiser, the sheriff, the supervisor of election, myself as tax collector. All of us are elected. We're constitutional officers. We get elected and we serve for 4 years. We come up for re-election every 4 years, at the same year that the governor of Florida comes up for re-election. And we are answerable to the people, literally answer to the people. We don't do a good job, they're going to find themselves another tax collector, property appraiser, or sheriff.
But you're no stranger to elected positions. You've been doing it for
quite a while.
Yeah, in the House.
I was in the Florida House 10 years, and then in the Florida Senate for 10 years, yeah.
So this was like semi-retirement, just being able to stay local?
No, I think
clearly doesn't
Tallahassee.
know you, sir. He doesn't know you that well.
Tallahassee
Claims he knows
was
you,
enough.
but he does not know you that well.
Tallahassee was enough for me, and had a great opportunity. Mike Olson, who was, in fact, Gary's boss for almost 30 years. Gary served with him. Mike Olson, a great guy, did a wonderful job, passed away, and this was an opportunity to be able to come back home and serve locally and serve the entire county. When you're elected at the state level, you only serve part of the county, whether it be in the Senate or in the Florida House. Here I had an opportunity to serve all of Pasco. I've lived here almost 50 years, so it's and I am blessed. Man, as a public servant, I am blessed to work with 205 wonderful people who are committed to serving our the public.
Nice. And Tim, you're not elected.
I'm not.
So
I work at the mercy of that man right there.
So is there stress?
Could you say that again?
Is there stress on
I
this?
thought you make me do that every day when I enter the office, reporting to work at your mercy.
Is there stress on the staff level during these election periods? Like everyone thinks their job is also up in the air, or is it more stable at that?
I mean, we know about it. Anybody who works for an elected official, if they don't understand, they're going to understand real quick that, there's 500,000 plus residents in Pasco County now, that your job, regardless, is to that constituency. You're here to serve, and the people, the staff that gets that their leaders impress that upon, it really almost takes care of itself. I hate to be so bold to say that, but it really does. You take care of those constituents, and those constituents walk away happy knowing that they've received a level of service that they would expect out of government. Because let's be honest, oftentimes in many states you don't get that. You don't get that, but we're blessed here in Pasco to certainly get that from every constitutional officer we have.
Nice. And Ray, who do you answer to?
I answer to me.
So you're your own appraiser.
I'm my own appraiser. I mean, I joke, but no, I mean, I have, all the banks I answer to, appraisal management companies. So, I've got phone calls coming in every day of, people wanting this, that, and the other. I'm kind of envious of the volume they do. If I had that many appraisals to do, I would have been retired by now. So, but yeah, what I do is obviously completely different on the private side than what the municipalities are doing. So it's different. It's a different value. But it's kind of where I chose to go through. But it's where I enjoy it, and like I said, election time I don't have to worry about it. But I get those slow times where the market's getting slow, and then you're kind of sweating, and then you're like, well, maybe there is another place I could go to.
Well, what I'd like to do after the break is really dive into the difference between an appraisal that Ray would do versus one that Gary would do, and how the appraisal happens. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. Our off-air number is 813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775. If you have any questions, just go ahead and text them over to that number. We'll see if we can get them answered. We have a full house today, so we're probably not going to take any on-air questions. But again, you're listening to the Tampa Home Talk. We have full house today, all about the trim notice, all about appraisals. We'll be back right after the break. Thank you. Welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm Leo Cannyn with Beryl Engineering and Inspection. I'm joined full house today. I've got elected officials. I've got people at the mercy of elected officials, and I've got private sector people who are at the mercy of elected officials. So around the table one more time. We got Ray Hall. Say hello so people get used to your voice.
Hey, how's everybody doing this morning?
I would say Mike, say hello so they get used to your voice. So they know your voice. We got Gary Joyner.
Good morning.
And we got Tim.
Good morning.
So let's do a little deep dive here. We'll talk about trim notice in a second, but we've got two different styles of appraisals. You do $500,000 appraisals in a year.
We have to, by statute, every new home or we can say a new home that's built, a new commercial building that's up, you put a pool in, you add a room on, all roof. We get all those permits. So yes, I have 11 staff that's all they do 5 days a week is in a vehicle in a certain section, checking every permit to make sure it's done, measure a new home out, and those homes go on it. Then we also have what we call a recheck. So just because your house got done this year, the law requires that every 56 months we're supposed to go out and recheck that house to make sure there hasn't been anything done, or just check the condition of it.
So that's like 4 years, 8 months. That's
but we've changed that. We do it a little faster. Right now we're doing it between every 24 and every 30 months. 30 months is a max that I want to see. We're trying to do it every 24 months just because a lot of things happen. And unfortunately, things get built without a permit. And that's part of that, catching that pool that got put in, or the room addition, or a lot of those things that we're missing. And
so you must like the fact that all the municipalities now have to have their permit information online.
It's great working with them. I can go from Dade City, the Zephyr Hills, Newport Richey, Port Richey. They're awesome to work with, and that is their revenue source. So the quicker they can get them to us, the faster we can get out there and get that things on the tax roll and don't miss anything. So yes, that is it's great working with them. Same with the county. We love to work with them, and they actually have partnered with us and gave us some licenses, so we access their building permits also, and nice. And that way we're on top of everything.
So with Ray, with one of your appraisals, you're going out there, either a pre-purchase or you're going to fight Gary in the court of law on the value of the home. So I know your appraisal process is going to be different than his. So talk a little bit about what you do to appraise a house, and let's find out what then Gary does.
So my appraisal process is more specific to the individual property. So I come out to the house. I'm going to walk through the inside of the house 9 times out of 10, especially if it's for a mortgage. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look for comps. I'm going to use Gary's website a lot for zoning and information regarding that house. So what I do is more specific to that individual property. So I'm coming up with a fair market value, and what Gary's doing, I don't want to speak for Gary, they're doing more of a mass appraisal. Because you look at me, I'm doing maybe about 15 to 20 appraisals a week right now, which keeps me up last night till about 2 in the morning writing reports. And if I had to do the volume Gary had to do, I don't know how it would be done.
You'd be very wealthy.
I would be retired.
You would be retired.
You would have pulled up in something different than this morning.
Exactly. I would have to be retired because I'd be exhausted. Because it's
no sleep.
But so that's kind of the difference. Mine is more specific to that individual property, whether it be a residential property or commercial or agricultural, whatever I'm asked to do. But that's mainly
so you're
where the
very
difference is.
property specific.
Yes.
But if I was to do let's say a condominium, and let's say I have 60 528 square foot units and 70 400 square foot units. All of those would have kind of the similar price.
Maybe yes, maybe no.
All the big ones and all the little ones.
Yeah, most likely.
Doesn't also determine if it's a condo, what floor it might be on?
Yes, that does too.
Whether it's a corner unit or whether it's one that's in the middle?
Sometimes yes and sometimes no on that.
What it's overlooking?
What it's overlooking, the floor level usually determines your view.
Sure.
So a lot of times you'll see...
The higher you go up, the more expensive.
The higher you go up.
Yeah.
So usually it's like, the first 10 floors are probably your more inexpensive, and then it goes up from there.
Right.
And then you're in the penthouse, which again, if I had your guys' volume, I'd be there.
Now, his volume, not mine.
Well, you get 2%. You said earlier.
I do get 2%.
2%.
But
Nice.
you understand,
But it's not on appraisal.
I don't get any money from the state, county, or the federal government.
Right.
Unlike Mr. Joyner gets money from the county, I get nothing. How we survive at the tax collector's office is the fees that we charge for the services we provide.
Okay. Interesting. Did
Yeah.
not know that.
No.
I send out a bill and charge them.
Yeah. So that's the intimate appraisal. You go to each house, you build your comps, you get an in-depth report.
Exactly.
What do you guys do? He keeps talking about this mass appraisal thing. I'm more curious now.
Well, and we do. We do use comps, but our difference is we're not house specific. We don't walk through that home and say it's got marble floors and granite countertops and all the the great things you can have in one. We don't do that. Ours is more based on what this model is. It's a 3-bedroom. It has 2 baths. It's this many square feet. It's on a golf course. It's on water. We take all those things in consideration. So when you're putting up we're going down the street and there's 10 houses that look identical, we're going to be very similar in a price. Maybe the corner lot may be a little more, or maybe you're at the end of the cul-de-sac and have a wider lot. That could be a little bit different. You'll have a lot price that'll be contributed, but maybe you have a fireplace. That may be a difference, but we don't actually walk through the home. Our more thing is the outside shell. Is it square footage is square footage, and
Gary, don't you decide based on what you just discussed, but it's going to be a taxable value or assessed value, whereas a private appraiser is going to be doing more of a market value.
Right.
Correct.
Which in some cases if someone's living in that home for quite a while and they've enjoyed the Save Our Homes cap, well, the assessed value is going to be a lot less than sometimes what the market value is going to be.
And that's some of the big questions we get on when people see their trim notice, or even when Mike sends out the bills and they call their Mike's office or call us. There's a difference. And Mike's right. If you're in a house 10, 15, 20 years, you've had the luxury of the Save Our Homes, and now you have what they call portability. So you're going to have a market value, or what we feel is assessed value, and then a taxable value. And it can be $150,000 difference depending on the size of the home and how long you've been there.
And how many times do we get phone calls in your office and our office? Someone had just purchased a home. They purchased a home for $300,000. The person who sold them that home has been living in that house for 20 years. So they've enjoyed the Save Our Homes cap. So now the person who's lived in that home is paying taxes on a taxable value, an assessed value of $150,000. The person who just bought it for $300,000, guess what? Their taxes are going up. And the new homeowner says, well, wait a minute. The prior owner was only paying $2,000. Now you're charging me $4,000. Well, that's because the new assessed value or taxable value is based on pretty much what you bought the home for.
The portability goes away. That difference in that cap goes away the minute the ownership changes. So basically it resets and starts again. So now that owner is going to have the luxury. Right now they're not feeling that luxury so well. But hopefully 10 years from now they'll have that luxury of having the cap on it. But that's only on homesteaded property also. That's not if you buy a rental house or a weekend house or something like that. That doesn't, that's not involved, and there's a different cap on that. But yes, the amount of calls, that's probably the hardest call we get when the tax bills go out in November, is that difference. What happened? We based our budget on those taxes, and now all of a sudden, like Mike says, my tax bill's $1,000 to $1,500 difference. We don't know where we're going to get the money, or my mortgage company's calling and wanting more money. So those are some of the difficult ones, and I understand realtors and things like that have a difficult job, but we try to stress to them, please show your new homeowner those differences. And I know people are excited, and I was lucky enough to go with my daughter when my daughter and son-in-law bought their house, and they were so excited. I think all they wanted to do was sign everything and get the key and get out. And for weeks they were calling and saying, well, what about this? We didn't know this and we didn't know that. And it was explained to them, but their excitement was about that house and not what I'm actually signing. So, I think that's the unfortunate thing. Everybody gets in that moment, and we do miss some things that are.
And one of the things, and Gary, what I'm sure Gary offers this, if someone who's buying a new home, they may want to contact the property appraiser's office and get an estimate of what the taxes will be based on what they're purchasing that home for. Don't go by what the prior owner is paying as far as taxes. It's going to be different.
Every piece of property we have out there, we have a little tab on it. We have several tabs on there. You can go to Mike's office, Supervisor Election, School
Right.
Board, building permits, but there's also a link on there for tax estimates. So you can click on it and see what it's going to go to. If I buy this, and they have been there 20 years, is it an affordable house?
I had a situation once where I was out and doing appraisal, and I kind of laughed because this was a couple who had a business buying and flipping houses, and they said, "Well, we're thinking of taking your appraisal to the county when it's done." I said, "What for?" They said, "Well, they're really underassessing our property, and we don't want it affecting our value." I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend that. But
Yeah.
Well, that would make Mike's department happy.
yeah, it would.
Listen, if I could reduce taxes tomorrow, I would. But unfortunately, our office has nothing to do with the amount of taxes you pay. That's decided by the millage rate and the assessed taxable value, and we just collect it.
So when we come back from the break, let's really dive into the trim notice, because that's what
30
Katrina
seconds.
wanted us to do this entire time. So we're going to dive into the trim notice. We're going to find out more information about that. And I'm learning there's probably 2 different letters coming out from 2 different departments. I'm learning a lot of information. I hope you are. This is Leo Cannyn with Tampa Home Talk, 813-377-2775. It's 813-377-2775. We'll be right back after the break to really dive into that trim notice. Thank you. Gary Joyner. This is not a bill. I'm joined with Mike Fasano. This is a bill. Ray Hall. I'm going to make your day by having your property appraised higher than the website. And Tim, who's going to handle all the questions and callers. So speaking of questions and callers, I believe we have a question from the 35,000 person listening audience.
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, it's from Katrina Madewell herself. As you all know, she is out at a convention. She's gaining more experience. In urban parlance, she's leveling up. But if you think for a second that she's not paying attention to the conversation, you got another thing coming. So she has texted me a question to ask for you guys. Why is there always a difference between the assessed value and the property appraiser's value, and when or what to do if it's too high, like a deadline to dispute it?
Tim, take it. You're the question man.
Well, I would take that, but that is right in Mr. Gary Joyner's wheelhouse, so I'm going to pass it over to him. Good try, though, Leo. That was
I tried.
When you do get a text, actually you're going to see when someone gets this trim notice, hopefully this afternoon or maybe even as late as tomorrow or Monday, you can see 2 different values on the trim notice. You're going to see what we have, an assessed value and a taxable value. Now the assessed value there can be anywhere between $1,000 and $100,000 difference. And what that is, depending on how long you've been in the home and if you have a homestead exemption, what that works out to be is what they call the Save Our Homes, and it's the portability. So what we have is, the law allows us to only go as high as 3% on an increase in a value in a year if you have homestead exemption. Non-homestead exemption is 10% a year. So we either go 3% or what the CPI is. Well, the CPI this year happened to be 1.9%.
Wow.
So that's the max we can go this year on any homesteaded property. So over time, we do see in a neighborhood or a section of town that, the homes are selling for a lot more. So yes, the assessed value is going to creep up and try to match those, but the taxable value stays, and that's the difference. We try not to tax somebody out of their home. So over time, that's where the what they call a portability comes in, and I think that's one of the hardest things to understand to a new homeowner that maybe bought a home that somebody had owned for 20 years. And it is hard. What that portability is for the new homeowner or the old homeowner is, say they buy a home and they had $100,000 worth of, we'll say, credit. They take that to the new home so they can upgrade and still come down in value to where they were in the home they just left. And their value, unfortunately, well, not fortunately, but fortunately for them, their taxable value stays low, but the assessed value would stay high, even on their new home. Yeah. That is the biggest question, and Mike, I know, gets a million calls like we do when the bills go out.
Gary just mentioned portability. That's the best secret that's out there regarding portability.
And you helped bring it about, didn't you?
I was the chairman. Charlie Crist was the governor. He asked me to co-chair a committee that we put before the people of Florida. It was a constitutional amendment. It passed, along with a few other things in the constitutional amendment. One of the issues in there was portability. Back then, portability wasn't so popular because homes were starting to go down in value. Now that they are up, you'll have somebody, let's say, for instance, you have a family. Mom and dad had 4 or 5 kids. They bought this big home right? They bought this big home. It's increased in value, but they've lived there 20 years. They have this huge portability to take with them if they want to. Now they want to downsize. They got a huge amount. That's a large amount. Gary talked maybe $50,000, $100,000 to buy a home. That is a tax credit, if you will, that gets reduced off of the taxable value even before the exemption comes in. If you are living in that home permanently, just remember, if you're going to sell the home that you're in, you have to use that portability within 2 years.
Yeah, we tried. Actually, legislation was tried this year to bump it up to 3 years. And the statistics show that most people, all but 5%, use it within the first 2 years. And there's about a 5 to 7% that come in after year 2 and try to use it. We tried to get legislation this year to push it up to 3, and unfortunately it didn't pass. But we'll try again next year for it and see if we can get it bumped up.
That would be great, because it gives people an opportunity maybe to sit, wait to see what they want to do.
See what they want to do. See where they might want to, And that portability is not just for this county. If they take this and they want to move to the Keys, and enjoy the sunsets every night, that portability goes with them no matter where they go in the state of Florida, and vice versa. Somebody in Hillsborough that moves up here, we take their portability, we contact each county with their information from there, bring it up here, they verify it, and then we apply it up here also.
They can find that on your website, right, Gary?
Yes.
They can actually calculate their
they
portability
can
for
put it
thinking
in there
about
right
selling.
away, and it'll calculate it all out for them.
Gentlemen, if I could interject on Katrina's behalf once again in referencing assessed value and appraiser's value and differences, she has an example. If I bought my house for $220,000 and you have it assessed at $260,000, how and why should someone dispute that?
Well, I would actually say if she got it for $40,000 less than we have it on the roll, that was a great deal. Our assessments, by and large, and this is not just in Pasco, it would be every county across the state, it's going to be lower than what an appraisal, a private appraisal, is going to be.
Why is that?
We don't take into account that you have marble or granite or anything else on the inside. We are basically just the structure, the outside measurements, how many bathrooms you have, maybe a fireplace or a pool. We only include those things. We don't include the actual inside amenities and things like that.
In a depressed market, back in 2007, 2008, I would get phone calls for people who thought they were overassessed, and then there is a specific type of appraisal we do with a specific valuation date that they can submit to the county. In fact, I did it for a couple of industrial properties, and they were able to lower their taxes. But in the current market, that would be really rare, if ever, that my appraisal is going to come in below the assessed value of the county.
And when you have a depressed market, if you will, like Gary talked about, the taxable value cannot go any higher than the CPI or the 3%. Well, guess what? Under the law, it can't go any less either.
Right.
And see, that's where we tried to change that through legislation to say that's just totally unfair to the homeowner. If that assessed value needs to drop more than 3%, the property appraiser should be allowed to do that. But under the law, they can't.
And as far as assessments and challenging the assessment, we welcome anybody that wants to challenge any of our assessments. They're more than willing to sit down with our appraisers, whether it be a residential piece or a commercial piece. We'll be glad to show them where we come up with that dollar amount, why we come up with it. If they can come back and show us something different, we will definitely consider it. Mm-hmm. Once these go out, the trim notices go out today, there is a process. They can come talk to us. We'll try to work it out that way the best we can, because the last thing we want to do is have anybody have to go to the Value Adjustment Board. But there is a form they can fill out through the clerk's office within the next 25 days that will give them the right to go before a magistrate, a private magistrate from somewhere that will look at our assessment, look at their assessment, what they come up with, and either
just so
agree
you know,
with us or
I
agree
fill
with...
out a form every year. It seems to get lost.
I don't know where.
Because of the property appraisers, I don't know what they do with it.
So I've just received, this is not a bill, and that I always say this is not a bill because that's the first thing that you see in big bold. What do I actually want to, as the average consumer? I'm an engineer, love tables, love numbers, so I study the whole thing. But if I'm the average person that doesn't want to be bothered with this, what is the only piece of information I need off of here?
Well, I think you're going to need more than one. I think you need to look at your assessment. I think you need to make sure that your exemption is still on there, and for some reason it hasn't been removed. I think you need to go down and look at your non-ad valorums, your streetlight assessments, your stormwater, and unfortunately this one has a PACE loan on it.
Right.
Those are all non-ad valorem, so please check those, see the dollar amounts, make sure you're okay with those. If you don't agree with them, we give phone numbers. call those numbers, see why it is what it is, why it's on your property. And then we also go back up and point out the millages. We put what the county charged last year, what the millages were last year. If nothing changes, this is what it would be. And if they have a proposal change, what it would be. So we give them 3 numbers. Last year's, what we're hoping it's going to be, and if the county changes the millage, commission changes the millage, what your tax bill would be. So they have a fairly good idea between that and their non-ad valorums, what Mike's going to send out in November.
So you get 2% of the PACE total too? Or is,
Anything that's on the tax notice.
so you must love PACE.
So we always welcome. Come on, put it on the tax notice. Anything that's on the tax notice, the tax
Leo,
collector under the law
Pace,
gets
and
2%.
And I think Mr. Fasano would tell you, Pace has cost us.
Yeah,
know,
and that's a great point.
That
We
2%,
we
but
actually
we
lose
trade the
money.
headache.
Yeah, we lose money on collecting the PACE money, place assessments because we hired a customer advocate, as I said earlier, to try and assist those who have PACE problems. And for the few, 1,000, just over 1,000 PACE loans in Pasco, it costs us a large amount of money to have to oversee those.
Well, it's a dangerous loan. I mean, you can't default on it because then you lose your house.
Right,
Correct.
and that's what concerns me. That with Gary and I were talking about it earlier, we're seeing already people who have PACE loans who are unable to pay their tax notice when they get that notice. They've seen their tax notice increase not just by a few dollars, but by 2-3 times the amount they paid the year before.
And this is a prime example, and I had staff find me one before I came. This is a prime example of someone's tax bill. Their non-ad valorums are $300 more a year than their ad valorem.
Yes.
And it comes down to the PACE loan.
We've
Their
had,
PACE loan is more than their actual tax bill.
We've had senior citizens whose tax bill was $200-300 a year, maybe $400. They were convinced they were talked into taking a PACE loan for whatever, and now their bill has gone from $400 a year to $1,400 a year. There's no way they can afford that. And it concerns me that in a couple of years from now, you're going to start seeing people losing their homes if we're not careful.
I mean, people were struggling to pay what they were paying.
Yes.
And now, I mean, and Mike, and I know Mike has had them also. We probably had some of the same ones that just come into the office and really pour their heart out. They don't know what to do. They have nowhere to go. And they admit they're going to lose their home.
Yeah.
Mike, do you get a lot of issues with people coming to you complaining about their CDD fees that are included? Yeah,
Absolutely.
I wondered about that.
We get a lot of people not understanding CDDs.
Right.
I had a homeowner that I called back, young couple, felt badly for. They didn't know their taxes were going up because they had bought a home based on what the taxes were about for the prior owner, and they had no idea that this community they were moving into had $2,500 of CDD fees.
Right.
They were now going to have to sell the home they just purchased because there was no way they could afford it. And that is why it's important, so important for people to ask questions.
Yes.
Don't sign anything. And that's why there are some great realtors out there that make certain people truly understand what they're getting themselves involved with because this is something you're going to own for the next 20, 30 years, you know?
Yep, I always tell people, when you're looking for a realtor, go with experience.
Yes.
Someone who
And that's
knows
why
what they're
we're on the
doing.
show today.
Yeah.
Because Katrina is listening. So if you are in need of a real estate agent that is supported by the people sitting in this room, text Realtor to 813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775. Katrina will help you out. She'll love where you live, or she's going to fix it. She'll get you in the right area. She'll teach you about portability. She'll keep you out of pace. She'll do all the things that you need to have done. We've even got some of her listings to talk about in our final segment. This hour is zooming by. I'm joined with Gary Joyner, whose notices are going to be in everyone's mailbox if you live in Pasco County. I'm joined with Tim, who can answer those questions. I'm joined with Mike, who can answer those questions, and Ray, if you want to dispute. And I've got a great scenario when we come back from the break. I want to talk about a scenario where you would legitimately want to dispute your 80% lower than it should be notice. We're going to talk about that when we come back. That's your little teaser. We'll be right back. Tampa Home Talk. Well, good morning. Welcome back. This is Leo Cannyn with Tampa Home Talk. We're in our final lightning segment because there's so many of us, and apparently we didn't do a good enough job answering Katrina's question from the last segment. She's asked it again, like a good attorney, which she's not. She's going to phrase the question slightly differently to get us to give a different answer. So what is Katrina's question?
Okay, well, the question is about she really wants to get an answer on that small window of time you have to appeal
Okay.
if the values are different. And she gave another example. It's not happening very often right now because the market is changing, all right? It's on an upswing. But what if somebody comes into a neighborhood and the state of the house is in disrepair? Say it's worth $50,000 as is. That's what the people bought it for. But it happens to be in a neighborhood where values are traditionally over $200,000. But the condition of the house has so much work that needs to be put into it. But say it got assessed at $150,000 because that's more in line with the neighborhood. So there's a small window of time for them to appeal that assessed value, correct? And what is that time, and how long do they have to go and try to get that readjusted?
Actually, they can appeal that to us at any time. That's not even a have to wait till the trim notice is mailed out. And I would encourage everybody, if you buy a home in a neighborhood that is, and you bought it for a fixer-upper, and maybe it's one of those neighborhoods that we haven't been out for 30 months and reassessed the condition of that home. And yes, we have been assessing and as every year going up the CPI amount, 2%, 1.9. So maybe the value has been going up on that house, the assessed value on that house, like all others in the neighborhood. But yet it's not at the same condition of those ones that are selling. By all means, come to our office. I'm sure go to any property appraiser in any county. But please come up to us. We will definitely look at it, go out there and take a look at it and come back and readjust that value. That is not uncommon. We have done it many times since I've taken office, and it is fair. Yes, I totally agree. We would not be charging somebody or have an assessed value of $200 or whatever on a house when it truly is maybe a $50,000 or $75,000 house.
But Gary, you're not going to go inside that home.
Absolutely
And
not.
that's
We're
what
going to take a look at it.
People need to understand that regardless of what it may look like inside, you're going to be based on what's outside.
Whether they've taken all the walls down and the cabinets out and things like that, that's not a concern. We go and look at the physical condition of the home. Yes, if the roof is coming down, the fascia's coming down, the soffit's falling off,
Right.
those are things we're going to consider, not the inside. The inside it's a total different appraisal.
But you can get Ray to give you a certain specific
There you
type of
go.
appraisal that
Yes.
can be used to do the fight.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll give a great situation. I just recently did a duplex where I walked up to the property. It looked great from the outside. I opened the door, and the door was bumping into the drywall that was caving in from the ceiling because it had been left for so long. The roof was leaking, and it was just a disaster inside.
So then you got your mask and then went back in.
I've 15 years. I've figured out whatever I'm going to get, I've already got it. So, no, that's I probably should keep a mask in the car, but I don't. No, I went into the house and it was in very, very. I couldn't find anything. Usually in my types of appraisals, we like to bracket a property. We like to find something better, something worse, something bigger, something smaller. This was the worst multifamily in this area, and I had nothing else to go by. This was in a more rural area of Florida. It was out of the Tampa Bay area. But
We'll just say Dade City.
Hey.
Come on now.
Hey.
Dade
Hey.
City's got
I got
nice
rolling hills.
areas.
It's the
Hey.
only place in the whole Tri-County area that
It's a
has
beautiful
rolling
area.
hills.
That's
I love
awesome.
driving
Beautiful
in Dade
area.
City.
in Pasco.
And it's one of the
Man,
only
you
areas.
don't live in Pasco.
I love driving in Dade City.
Yeah.
Dade City is
He
one of the
takes it
only
back.
areas where I get.
No, I always loved driving in Dade City.
It's the only area I get basements. Most
That's right.
In Dade
Florida
City, yeah.
appraisers don't ever
Isn't
look
that
at a
wild?
basement. Yep.
That wild.
In fact, I was surprised. I went into one basement and it was finished.
Wow.
They had a bedroom. They had
Wow.
a bathroom, and
Wow. Hold
That's-
yourself up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never
We
knew.
actually had to design a sump system and the waterproofing in Dade City for a basement so it can be turned into a living space. Might have been the same house.
well, this one it was kind of fortunate. They were at the top of a hill, a very steep hill, so the groundwater wasn't necessarily an issue. I once did a house out in Davis Islands, and it was on the water, and they had a basement, and the homeowner even said, I said, "So you have a basement?" She said, "Yeah, you don't want to go down there." I said, "We don't need to go down there then."
Wow.
I did one on Bayshore. Actually, it was a very prominent family here in the Tampa Bay area, and they had a basement. And it was funny, the representative who brought me down there, he said, "Yep, now you can see why we don't have basements."
Yeah.
They had all the AC handlers down there, but, there was
Yes.
a little bit of water collecting on the floor. So,
Wow.
but up in Dade City, you can actually get some utility
Yeah,
out
you're
of it.
high up there in some areas. It's a beautiful area.
So let's talk. I know we're running really low on time, but there is a situation because we're also in construction. So what we see a lot is something called the FEMA 50 rule. And if you go according to Mr. Gary's notice and you take your building value and you divide that in half, That's the amount of money you have to spend in a renovation before you have to completely upgrade your entire home. So would you be available, Ray, to do an appraisal to raise property values to get that number higher?
I've had to do that before, actually. Yes. Anytime you need a valuation, you can call me. We can help out. We can sit and talk about it. I've had people call me up wanting an appraisal for a certain situation, and I've told them, look, I'm happy to take the job, but you don't need that kind of appraisal. You don't need this. You may just want to, pull some sales yourself and go ahead and do that. But, anytime you have a discrepancy in a value, you can go ahead and call me. And I get that question a lot. People think that I can only work for a bank. I would prefer to work for the general public as much as possible. Any valuation issue, you can call me if you need the high end, the low end. Give me a call. We can come out, talk about it, see what you need, and we can work with Gary's office and see how we can help you.
So do you see a lot of appraisals come through to try and raise property values for homes under construction?
We don't on residential, but we have on commercial. We've had a few commercial property owners, more shopping centers.
Now, how long would that process take? Like, let's just say I'm a homeowner, I need to replace my roof and my AC, and I need to raise my property value to do that. How long would that process take?
We're not going to go out there and just raise your property value because that's what you want us to do. We've got to justify it, and we're going to go out and justify it with other comps in that same neighborhood or maybe the neighborhood next to it, and we're not going to be used as a tool for that person to get an extra $1 or $2 out of FEMA. That's not what we're here for.
And is that only during this
That's
trim
any
notice?
time of the year.
So that you can do that any time of the year.
Yeah, somebody's going to really have to, and we average maybe about 2,000 VAB hearings a year. I'm pretty proud of our staff. They do a great job, and we probably only maybe lose 1%. So I'll take those numbers. Our staff they work very diligently, and I can tell you every one that comes out has an inch file thick on them. They do their homework, and like I say, we're proud. We'll take on the magistrate, we'll take them on, and we can justify where we're at.
Nice. So,
yeah. I've never had a dispute for Pasco County, so I haven't gone against Gary yet.
Okay, well, this has been a very exciting hour here at Tampa Home Talk. We've had
Good job, by the way.
No,
well
thank
done.
you. We've had Mike Pisano, who actually let me ask.
Katrina's still listening.
Yeah, Katrina's still listening, but Mike has actually let me talk the most out of any time Mike's ever been on the show. So
Yes.
thank you for
Well,
that.
that's because you're the MC today.
Oh, that's true. Katrina's not here, even
don't
though
get
she's
used to
watching.
it.
She's watching. We had Ray Hall from Ray Hall Appraisals with the private side. We had Gary Joyner. Thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's just awesome to finally put a name to the paper I receive in the mail every year. And we have Tim, personal goal of mine to get you to talk more in the
preceding
future.
program was paid for by
We lost
Katrina
the time.
Madewell.
So
The views
we're
and
good.
opinions
Thank you very much.
expressed
You
on
listen
this
to
program
Home
were those
Talk.
of Katrina Madewell
yeah,
and not
catch you next
those
week.
of Beasley Media.